Good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 26, 2023. The time is now 5:31 p.m. This meeting of Georgetown County Council is being called to order, and I do see we have a quorum present. We'll ask Councilor Carolina to give us the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come together this day asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Allow us to grow closer as elected officials in nurturing the bonds of our communities. Strengthen and bless this country in this great experiment known as democracy as we experience these challenging times. Let us continue to emphasize citizens' responsibilities for protecting and defending our Constitution, which is the basis for this country's great heritage and foundation. Continue to remind us that all we do as stewards over the land is for the greater glory of you in service to humanity and progress in Georgetown County. Continued peace and blessings to all in our county, state, and country. In your mighty name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Carolina, and thank you all for attending this meeting of Georgetown County Council. We move on down to our approval of our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by Councilor Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Carolina. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move down to our special reports and presentations. We'll begin with our nonprofit spotlight, our Minority Business Accelerator, Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce. Will someone be making the press? Ms. Stedman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council, Madam Administrator, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and to talk to you about a wonderful program that the Chamber has embarked on for the last few years. As we get started, I want to introduce some members of our team that are here with us tonight. First of all, Jeannie Christian with J. Christian and Associates, who serves as our program facilitator. Maya Moody with Georgetown County Economic Development, Julie Dyer and Joanna Lombardozzi with the Chamber of Commerce. So I want to really take the time to thank them for their input and their time in putting together a wonderful program. So why are we holding a Minority Business Accelerator program? First of all, we know that a healthy economy contributes to a high quality of life. But we also understand that there is a wealth gap that has been growing among the minority community. According to the Economic Policy Institute, today the median wealth for white families is about 12 times higher than black families. From 1950 onward, the wealth gap remained fairly flat, so there was virtually no progress. But a recent study by Dr. Laura Derencourt of Princeton shows that since the 1980s, that gap has actually been widening. So we also acknowledge that a wealth gap exists here in Georgetown County, and most especially the racial wealth gap. And we understand at the same time that the financial well-being of the minority community, women, and veterans is central to ensuring that Georgetown County's growth is wonderful and that we're a prosperous community. So access to opportunities for wealth building is essential to our families and to our community. Small business is the backbone of our economy. Entrepreneurship and business ownership play key roles in wealth building. It's a viable path to higher echelons of net worth. And if you look at the slide here, you can see the differences in the minority communities for entrepreneurship and business ownership. Minorities continue to remain underrepresented among business owners and entrepreneurs. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Agency, quote, Entrepreneurship is a sure pathway to wealth creation and a thriving national economy. Today, U.S. minority business enterprises represent 29% of all firms, but only 11% have paid employees. If these organizations were to obtain parity, the U.S. economy would realize 13 million more jobs. So the goal of our Minority Business Accelerator program is ultimately to advance economic inclusion. We want to build a foundation for entrepreneurial success for members of the Georgetown County community. So why the Chamber? Why us? So as a Chamber of Commerce, and as leaders and as simply members of our community, we're dedicated to strengthening the business community and the overall quality of life in Georgetown County. The MBA program is one initiative to help us work toward making Georgetown County an even better place to live, work, and play. Our team works with entrepreneurs by offering education and training to help foster and strengthen both their business acumen and their leadership skills. We're also providing opportunities for entrepreneurs to connect with other business leaders throughout the area, and we assist them in developing contacts and mentors that help support them on their entrepreneurial journey. Additionally, our class members are completing or updating business plans to keep their business moving forward. The MBA is designed to advance economic inclusion. The program focuses on increasing the overall capacity of women, veteran, and minority entrepreneurs by helping them strengthen their foundation so they can expand their businesses or embark upon new business ventures. We're creating an initiative based on abundance and hope rather than scarcity and fear. We want to focus on what's possible when we work together. So here are a few of the topics that we cover in our MBA program. The target for our Minority Business Accelerator program are traditionally underserved minority women and veteran-owned business owners with less than $500,000 in revenue annually. So they benefit from the information that's provided and the connections are so important. It's an important part of what we do in the class. We provide them with this information and the connections while they're in the program to result in a more viable and successful business, which has a positive impact on their bottom line. So woven into each session are leadership lessons that also offer additional support in their personal and professional development. So the benefit gain extends way beyond the business owner to their families, to their business acquaintances, and to the community at large as we seek to advance economic inclusion. So we hold a series of classes every other week, January through May. Folks also have homework outside of their classes, and many of these people are working 1 and 2 jobs in addition to starting their new businesses. And I tell you, they're quite an inspiration. They faithfully attend and have been wonderful participants and active participants in this program. So some of the highlights of the program are noted for you on the slide. In addition to the classes, we invite the class members to attend and participate in our community expo. They are able to access chamber events and chamber programs. We host a business plan pitch, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. And then at the end of their class time, they also receive a complimentary membership in the Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce, so that we hope that they will continue that relationship with us so that we can continue to assist them and support them throughout the year. And I love this photograph because I think that says it all. This is one of our class members from 2022. We're looking at creating opportunities for families. And I just think that's so important and can't be overstated. So our first class, and each class, Mr. Christian has them give themselves a name, they come up with a name. And so our first class called themselves Evolve. And you can see the variety of businesses that participated, everything from an inn, and I saw Mr. Baxter come in just a few minutes ago, to hair care, to transportation and logistics, to we even had a private investigator come in, and that was quite interesting because he didn't want his photograph taken in anything. Apparently he has a lot of work in Georgetown County. But we have a wonderful group. And when we first started the program, we were hoping that we would have 5 participants. We were going to be really happy with 5. And the first year we ended up with 20. So it greatly exceeded our expectations as far as the participation goes. So our second class was held this past winter from January through May, purpose-driven. And again, you can see the variety of the businesses that were represented here. And one thing that the chamber has made a commitment to, and different folks who have been helping us and assisting with the program have also made a commitment to, is when we can, we hire members of these classes to work for us in various capacities. And so we want to continue to do that as we can and as our needs match. So I would encourage you to, when you look at this list and there are people that you think you could use their services, I would encourage you to reach out to them. We'll be happy to put you in touch with them. We've also encouraged them to register as vendors with Georgetown County so that they can take advantage of the procurement opportunities available. And we will also be creating some alumni programs for them this coming year. Finally, one of the most exciting parts of the program is after they go through the program, they do a pitch. So they're pitching their business plan to a group of judges. And we have been able to provide them with cash awards. In 2022, Marie Livingston received $5,000 to support her logistics business. Then in 2023, the judges were so torn about only selecting one person that they actually dug into their personal pocketbooks to provide additional cash funds and cash awards. So this past year, we were able to give a total of $8,500 in business support to 3 businesses, and you see them there. Stephen Grant won the top prize, Tamika Clark Williams, and then Benjamin Holmes. One success story I wanted to share with you very quickly is Diana Simmons, who was in our first class, who owns and operates WNS Transport Service. And she stopped by the office the other day to tell us about her new purchase of a 2023 18-wheeler. She was so excited about making this investment, and we're very proud of her that she had the confidence in herself to make that investment in her business. And I can tell you that a lot of that doesn't come just from the business part of the program. It comes from the leadership part of the program. And Mr. Christian has been essential in helping develop these leadership skills and these personal skills with these class participants. So this next year, one of the changes we're going to incorporate is we're going to make our business plan pitch a public event. What we will hope will come from that is that the businesses will have the opportunity to pick up some clients and customers, and that we can spread the word a little bit more about the great things that they're doing. So here you have a list of a number of our sponsors and partners. We could not have put this program together without the support of the Francis P. Bunnell Foundation and Georgetown County and Georgetown County Economic Development. And as you can see, we have partnered with a number of other organizations. We've had a host of presenters, both local and from the state and national levels, and we want to really appreciate all that they're adding to the program. Also want to thank council members for your support and participation. A number of you have attended programs and classes and events and spoken, and we thank you so much for that partnership. We certainly will be looking forward to expanding our partnership base. So we would encourage you, if you have ideas of other groups or organizations that could assist us, or individuals that could assist us with this program, to please let us know. Our 2024 cohort application will open up Monday. It will be available online at visitgeorge.com, or you can call me or email me, and we'll be happy to get applications. So we encourage you and invite you to please share this application with people in the community who could benefit from it. So with that, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak and tell you a little bit about our program. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you.
Okay.
So much.
That's the shortest speech he's ever made.
Are there any comments or questions from council?
I've got a question or two. When did you all start this program? What year?
We started in January of 2022. So we've had two
20,
classes.
22?
2022.
Okay. Did you all start with some baseline metrics of where you were so you can see how you're doing against that baseline over time and see how successful you are?
That will be something that we'll be implementing. We have some really rudimentary, very rudimentary,
Yeah, I think
that we're looking at right now, but that's something we can.
Yeah,
certainly-
I'd take a look at that because then you can tell where you started and where you're going.
Yes, sir.
So that's very good. And you got a good man standing beside you there too.
Absolutely.
Now, I forgot who paid me to say that, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, and this is not talking about being paid, this is not a paid advertisement, but while the rest of us have done a lot with the logistics of the program, Mr. Christian truly has been the heart of the program. I don't think I need to say anything else about that.
Okay. Okay.
An accountant? Okay.
Okay.
If you
Well,
have
we-
a suggestion, let us know. An
Sure.
accountant who can teach.
Okay, we appreciate you all recognizing the needs of Georgetown County and bringing a program to the county which would help resolve some of those particular issues. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for all you do.
Yes, sir.
We'll go down to presentation of proclamation number 23-30 in recognition of October 2023 as Fire Prevention Month in Georgetown County. We have our Director of Emergency Services, Mr. Ellis.
Good evening, Chairman Morant, members of council. As you mentioned, I'm here in regards to Proclamation 23-30, which recognizes the month of October 2023 as Fire Prevention Month in Georgetown County. It also recognizes the week of October 8th through 14th as Fire Prevention Week. The theme of this year's fire prevention initiatives will be Cooking Safety Starts With You, and we will emphasize the following safety considerations throughout the week. Keep a close eye on what you're cooking, clear the cooking area of any combustible items, turn pot handles towards the back of the stove, and create a kid and pet safe cooking zone. I'm joined this evening by representatives from Georgetown County Fire EMS, Midway Fire Rescue. It doesn't look like anyone from Merle's Inlet Garden City Fire Rescue was able to join us. And collectively, these organizations, in conjunction with our municipal partners, City of Georgetown Fire Department, Town of Andrews Volunteer Fire Department, they provide fire protection services throughout Georgetown County to the residents and visitors. Our personnel will be out throughout the month of October, delivering many, many different public education initiatives for the young and the old, all age ranges from toddlers to our seniors. Throughout the county in an effort to make Georgetown County a safer place. This is really kind of a snapshot of the rather lengthy proclamation before you that I forego reading, but I'm subject to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ellis from council? Okay. Hearing that, our proclamation is included within our package. So is there a motion to adopt proclamation number 23-30?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Elliott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Newman. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, photos.
Got your photo shoot on? Yeah, you
Voted
got a
wrong.
good suit. He wore his good suit tonight.
Put the agenda closer. Right, we'll move on down to our public comments. A public comment period is included on each meeting agenda and shall be limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. No speaker may yield his/her allotted time to another speaker. Members of the public who wish to address council during the public input period should sign up with the clerk of council before the meeting is called to order. Please note the screen for the countdown, and when your minutes expire, please conclude your comment. Please stop your comment, I should say. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone sign up for public comments this evening?
Mr. Chairman, we do have 13 speakers signed up tonight, and as you stated, each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. And our first speaker of the night is Ms. Gwen Campbell. Our next speaker will be Christopher Lung. Nick Steins. These people signed up online.
Okay.
Florence Fuentes. Connor Calloway.
Good evening. I'm here, my family's here on behalf of several Hagley Estates family members and property owners in concern to the closure or conversion of Heather Drive, which has been a public road for 30 to 40 years since the community was developed and has now been converted to a private road. I was notified of this a few weeks ago by their attorney, which we discussed pros and cons with it. And I'm here today to voice for a lot of the homeowners just that some of the things we were told that would happen with it, that it would not be shut down completely, have since changed. We have not had due process, in my opinion, for the public to voice their opinion. I live at 73 Heather Drive, directly next to where this road closure is taking place. I'm not affected by it on my day-to-day, so I'm somewhat impartial with this whole process, but it does serve as a second outlet for us to vacate the property should a hurricane come and flood Clifton, which it has. 3 named storms since I've moved to the area in 2018. 3 different times Clifton has flooded over, which would then we'd all be stranded there. And so that is a concern. It has been brought to my attention this evening that what is going to happen moving forward might be amended. So I would defer to that. I guess my only point in speaking here today is I would like the county, to have some say on what can and cannot be done with this roadway. And you need to listen to your community instead of just, closing something that's been public for years and years and years without proper notice. I've been attacked, my family's been attacked this week, even though we had no part of this petition, which is fine, we can handle it. But we pay taxes, we're in this county, we're all, pretty reasonable people, but we need to have a voice, Who's to say I can't section off my property and gate everything in at Clifton and Heather? You know what I mean? You're setting a precedence that I think is a bit scary. And so y'all need to hear the people. I know a lot signed up online that are not here, but you need to listen to your community. This is affecting a lot of people. It's not just one and done. Somebody slipped an order in and, talked to somebody over here, and got it approved. Okay, you got to listen. Due process has to happen if you're changing a public road to private. There are 3 or 4 families that are set to gain this. One has already started an addition. They don't have to abide by the setbacks required. Listen to people, that's all.
Kathy Henderson.
Good evening. I'm here on the same subject. I live in Hagley Estates, and I would like to talk about the proposed closure of Heather Drive. I've lived there over 33 years and have always used that road. It's just a small dirt road, and, the distance is not long at all. And my concern is we were never notified of even trying to change this road. The way I found out is one day I was headed out, as I always do, go in that direction, and these homemade signs were up saying, "Head the road closed." There was one sign, no walking, no bicycle riding, no golf carts, no anything. And when you're going to do something, you have to let the community have a say in it and vote on it. And if there's any objections, they have to hear them all. Another big concern of mine with that road being closed, I have grandchildren that live in the area, and they have many friends and other children in the area. And they use that road as a safe passage to get to their friends. And if they don't use that road, they're going to have to go on those paved roads that have traffic, and people do speed on those roads. And their safety is very important to us, and that's the main problem. And most of them do ride their bikes on it, walk on it, and travel that way to get back and forth between home and friends and grandparents. So that's one of my main concerns, besides us not being notified of it. And I was also told that the people were planning on putting up a gate, so people could not have access. Hagley is not a gated community. We are an open community where people travel from spot to spot. If everybody decided to close their roads off, how are we all going to get around? So that being said, I appreciate your consideration and your time, and I hope you look into this. Thank you.
Mark Bear.
Good evening, everyone. I tend to ramble, so I tried to compose myself here. My name's Jeffrey Mark Bear. I live at 1146 Old Plantation Drive. We purchased the property midsummer 2011. Growing up in this area, I always wanted to live in Hagley. It still reminds me of how I grew up, how I want my son to grow up. We're truly lucky to be surrounded by all the natural beauty and the rich history. At one time, the property was owned by the Atlantic Lumber Company, and the steamships would carry passengers to Hagley Landing, where the train would then take them out to vacation on the island. Have you heard the ghost stories of Hagley Landing? Let's also remember the history of Plowden Weston and Randy Tucker. If you don't know his story, I encourage you to. He's responsible for some very notable structures, including the Pelican Inn out on Pawleys Island. I mention his name because as I pass by Randy Tucker Court, I'm reminded of his contributions to our community. I think of how he lived and worked on the very ground we call home. Our community, our public roads are not just for getting around. They're for exploring and connecting with our neighbors, our friends, our history, and our heritage. I checked today and there's still a green road sign for Heather Drive, and as I understand it, the color green denotes it as a public road. I use Heather Drive multiple times a week, and the first time I became aware of this closure was when I saw homemade signs stating the road was closed. I reached out to our HEPOA as well as the county. I live literally right around the corner on a dirt road with the same problem of speeders and dust. But as some of you in the neighborhood are aware, we've been battling stormwater intrusion since the first rainstorm after purchasing the property. There have been notices and meetings involving not only the street but the neighborhood for years. So I have to wonder, how is a public road closed? No notice, no discussion, just around the corner from me for the benefit of 3 homeowners. Does this mean that myself and my 2 neighbors' homes that have been dealing with the flooding can close our section of Old Plantation to eliminate the stormwater intrusion? So, thank you.
Teresa Engel. Glenn Wilson Sr.,
I'm here to talk about Heather Lane also. I've talked to your attorney. I've talked with Kevin Simpson. I've talked with everybody that's in the Public Works Department. Ray Funny came out about a year ago and helped me address some issues. He did about 25% of the 100%, so 75% is still not done. But Ray Funny showed up and listened to what we had to say. We had an input. This has no public posting that we can find anywhere. You provide us about, on your website, there's no public notice posted on the county website since April 13th of 2022, and that was about the election that year. There are road signs posted for construction on Highway 51, Browns Ferry Bridge, Intercoastal Waterway. And if it's said that they posted on a newspaper, everybody doesn't use a newspaper. Everybody doesn't use a computer. But a sign on the side of the road that says zoning, Georgetown County is going to change the zoning. Georgetown County is going to do this. Georgetown County is going to do that. That would help tremendously, and it's required. And as I see it, someone has violated their oath of office and fiduciary responsibility because we were not allowed to have input. They complain about traffic. Has a traffic study been done? How many tickets has Carter Weaver Sheriff's Department wrote on Heather Drive? Do you know Heather Drive is probably not as long as this room? They say 18-wheelers. Well, that was fine as long as they were building that house right there on the corner of Heather and Woodmore. They brought 18-wheelers. They brought pound trucks in. But now the house is finished, oh no, we're going to block them off. The plaintiffs did not do their homework. If it says by the lake, by the waters, stream, guess what? You have just bought into a gum swamp that's going to flood, just like this gentleman says. That area floods, and if Heather's not open, we cannot traverse through there. Hagley Estates Property Owners Association signed off on this understanding, and they do not represent 800 people in Hagley. Thank you for your time.
Chris Spigner,
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Spigner, and I am here once again to speak out about the needed changes to our current boat landing ordinance. First off, I would like to thank Councilman Everett Carolina for listening to our concerns and for asking for a council workshop to discuss this issue. I would also like to thank Chairman Morant and the County Attorney, Jay Watson, for meeting with me. We discussed many things concerning the present ordinance and why a county business registration would not work to resolve this issue. They asked if I had any ideas, which I did have one suggestion: selecting a few dual-purpose landings that were capable of supporting both commercial and private. They said that idea could be discussed with the council. I've added a few more ideas to my proposal change that would be very simple and be just a little addition to the existing ordinance. I've added a few more ideas. Let's see. It would read like this. The following boat landings are designated dual purpose for commercial and public use. Carroll Campbell Marine Complex, max passengers 40. South Island, max passengers 5, and others to be determined by the council. Max passengers does not include captains and crew. All commercial boats using these landings must carry liability insurance and have their passengers sign waivers to release the county of any liabilities. Commercial boaters should not occupy a courtesy dock for longer than 20 minutes. Commercial passengers should use designated parking only, designated car parking only. I hope this proposed ordinance, addition to the ordinance, covers everyone's concerns and can be discussed by the council in their upcoming workshop so that we can quickly resolve these issues. We want our commercial tour boats, fishing charters, and guides and others back on our waterways. And to remind everyone why this change is so important, many of the boat tours focus on helping to educate the public on preserving South Carolina's fragile wetlands and ecosystems because they care about tomorrow. The fishing charters and guides, they allow our tourists to experience the thrill of catching that big one. There is absolutely nothing better than word of mouth to spread the joy and recommendations for visiting Georgetown County. Thank you for listening.
Lee Brockington.
I'm also speaking to the issue of private businesses and the use of public boat landings. Since I moved here in 1984 from landlocked Columbia, I worked at Abcall Barony on the land and on the water, teaching history and ecology. I was on the committee to create Bayfest and was assigned to charter Hoss Johnson's Big Head boat from Murrells Inlet and write a script for a boat tour for Bayfest. Interviewing David Schrantz, then the director of the Port of Georgetown, I learned so much that I never knew about the commercial activity of our port. We continued those Bayfest boat tours, and I always remember the people who had lived here all their lives but told me I've never been out on a boat until Bayfest. In the late 1980s, I wrote the script for the Island Queen boat tours that operated out of Georgetown Landing for many years. Through my work at Hobcall Barony, I chartered Captain Sandy's tours 100 years ago, also Captain Rod's Low Country tours, and certainly Rover tours for many, many trips on the Five Rivers and Winyah Bay. I usually wrote my own scripts to make these tours, these floating lectures, different and theme-oriented for our educational purposes. From the 1980s, the 90s, and until 2020, I retired early to spend time with my recently deceased husband. I went into partnership with Captain Paul Kenny, a licensed captain, researcher, and educator at Hobcall Barony for the Bell Baruch USC Marine Education Institute. For 2 years, Captain Kenny's pontoon boat, Imagine, he and I have offered tours to 6 paying guests and educated visitors and local residents up the Waccamaw, the PD, to Sandy Island, where we disembarked and had dinner with resident Laura Harriet on Sandy Island. These tours, these floating lectures, seem to serve a purpose, and I hope that we can offer them again in the future. I believe the greatest problem facing County Council is simply parking at public boat landings, and I feel strongly that this problem can be solved, directing all of us who are involved in business activity to park in a place you designate, whether it is elsewhere at East Bay Park or if it is at the larger Carroll Campbell Landing. I urge you to study the parking issue and consider resuming these boat tours, which all of us agree adds to the knowledge of visitors and locals and our area's beauty, our fragile ecology, and our diverse cultural history. Georgetown County Council has always worked, to solve problems and provide for the haves and the have-nots. I know you see the value in these boat tours and will create a viable solution. Thank you.
Jerry O'Sullivan.
Good evening. My name is Jerry O'Sullivan. My wife Gail is here also. We're here on behalf of Lee. We took her tour this spring, and I was shocked because we live on the creek in Burles Inlet, and our boat, we go out in the creek and not in the ocean, and really hasn't spent any time on the river. And I was amazed at all the plantations that are on the river. Lee is a great local historian. And Paul Kenny, the skipper, is also a marine biologist. So Lee was giving us the historical aspects, and Paul gave us the, ecological talk about the area. Anyhow, we own Airbnb, and we referred our guests to them for that tour. And one lady was telling us that she asked us, my grandmother's been coming to Pauley since she was a child, and she loves the area. Could you recommend anything maybe different? And of course, we told her about the tour, and she was thrilled. So I think it's a national treasure with the local history and the presentation that's available. And I would just like to see it go on in the future. Thank you.
Clarissa Tootin.
Good afternoon. My name is Clarissa Tootin. I spoke last week about commercial use of public boat landings. Last session, you also proposed a proclamation that read, the health of our coastal estuaries, including Winyah Bay, is critical to providing risk reduction, recreational and commercial opportunities for residents and visitors alike, to the overall health and well-being of the marine ecosystems and the humans dependent of these ecosystems, and to the economy in which these estuaries support. However, commercial businesses are not able to gain access to this estuary. Visitors are not able to gain access to this estuary unless by some miraculous work of art, they're able to bring their boat with them. You are also not supporting the economy that the estuary supports, since we can't put commercial boats in at these landings. Many families in Georgetown County are supported by commercial fishing, shrimping, fishing charters, or by providing tours to visitors. Most of these visitors also choose to dine, shop, and explore Georgetown before and after their trips. And like my grandfather said last week, we have always been a marine-based town, and it is very sad to see local marine-based businesses being pushed out by this ban. These men and women are not using the boat ramps as a place of business. They are simply using the ramps as an entryway into their business, much like our county roads or our sidewalks, like walk down Front Street. Those sidewalks are used to eat or as a place of entry into these businesses. Last week, 2 men offered me a ride across the ICW after I was working on Tom Yawkey. There was nobody to ferry me over. We talked for a minute, and he explained that he was a charter captain, and I asked him how he felt about this ban. And he said that it was putting him between a rock and a hard place, because it meant that he either had to close down his business or break the law. And that's the reality for many of our county citizens at this point. Last but not least, the ecosystem that we do live around is extremely important. I don't know about your beliefs on climate change, but our coastal marsh ecosystems take up 3 to 10 times the amount of carbon as an equally sized rainforest, just to give you one example. I think that we should allocate a few of our boat landings throughout the county to be available for commercial use. That way we're not having issues with parking. Carroll Campbell Boat Landing, for example, 200 trucks with trailers can park there, or 150 trucks with trailers and 100 cars. It's that simple. This will reduce the strain of parking at high-demand landings while ensuring that our citizens will not be put out of business. So I just hope y'all consider that. I think it's a good solution and a good compromise for everybody.
That's our final speaker.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please note that council has heard you and is respectful of your comments. Thank you all for your comments.
State your name.
Okay. That's real quick. Joseph Baxter, by the way. If I need to state it first. Just go ahead. Okay. Hi, my name is Joseph Baxter. I'm the owner of Baxter Brewhouse Inn. We're South Carolina's first bed and brew in South Carolina, right down the street in Georgetown. I just wanted to talk about tourism and the commercial use of the boat landings. I support, of course, commercial businesses using those boat landings. It brings tourists to town. They spend money. They pay taxes in town, and they frequent the establishments that are downtown on Front Street. They walk from our inn. I agree that those boat landings, they get a lot of use out of them. And I think, of course, the county just bought the port. Hopefully that's a solution in 3 years once you get it cleaned up to use that. So maybe a temporary usage of these boat landings for these commercial businesses until you have that port cleaned up and used for them. But that's what I'd like to ask county council to hopefully make some decisions in regards to having those commercial businesses be able to use a few of those boat landings, especially the Campbell over that's in Marriott. It's a big place. And maybe it's only a Monday through Thursday or a Monday through Friday that they can use it. I know that parking on the weekends, on a Saturday and Sunday, of course, East Bay Park, I know is really super busy. But hopefully you guys can make a decision and allow those boat companies to operate and continue to bring tourists to Georgetown. That is a big lifeblood for a lot of the little business owners that are down on Front Street and off of Front Street like myself. Thank you guys for allowing me the time to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We move on down to our consent agenda. There are 2 matters on the consent agenda which were previously approved by virtue of the agenda approval process. That was procurement number 23-052, 13 police vehicles, and contract number 21-011, change order number 4, architectural design services, New Georgetown County Detention Center. We move down to appointments to boards and commissions. We'll start with the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission, Councilor Raymond Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm recommending an appointment, Donna Carr Williams, to Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission. She comes highly recommended on a very important commission. I think sometimes we overlook due to the serious drug problem we have in this county. And she has basically dedicated her life to this subject, so I highly recommend her. And I move that we appoint Donna Carr Williams to the commission.
Thank you, Councilor Newton. We have a motion for Councilor Newton to appoint Donna Carr Williams to the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We go down to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would like to nominate Sharon Melton to represent District 4 on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilor Johnson for the appointment of Sharon Melton to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Is there a second?
Second.
So moved.
Second by Councilor Carolina. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm recommending we appoint Allison Thomas Newton to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And just for a side note, Ms. Newton is not a relative of mine. There's 3 distinct separate groups of Newton in the Andrews area. I come from the poor Newton. She comes from the wealthier Newton crowd.
All right. We have a motion from Councilor Newton for the appointment of Allison Newton to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. We're going down to our resolution and proclamations. Ms. Langston. County Finance Director.
Tell me I was doing this tonight, but that's okay. This is just a resolution to, we're actually going to reallocate $2 million of the ARPA money to, it was set aside to go to Georgetown County Water and Sewer District and their project to supplement funding, grant funding for them, and that has fallen through. So we want to reappropriate that to those water projects that are listed in the resolution.
Okay.
I'll try to answer questions if I can.
Okay. Any questions for?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question.
Sure.
Really? You gotta mess with me.
And thank you for doing this on the spur of the moment. We really appreciate you,
problem.
but we know you're
What's
always,
going on?
you're always prepared. Have you had any contact with the Water and Sewer District on these projects? And what could be a possible timeline for any start dates?
I'll take that one. I've had a conversation with them the end of last week. They, quite frankly, were rushing me to get this in so we could certainly get these. They have done some preliminary designs, but they want to get these assigned as quickly as possible. So I think they certainly were looking at starting at least 1 or 2 before the end of the calendar year. But we will go through some kind of notification process for those folks in the various areas. Well, Georgetown Water and Sewer will.
Thank you very much. That wasn't hard at all, was it, Chairman?
Are there any other questions for Madam Administrator or our Finance Director? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion regarding resolution number 23-31?
So moved.
It is properly moved by Councilor Newton. Councilor Newton for the adoption of resolution number 23-31. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We move down to our third reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 23-28. Our Plan Director, Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a request from Mr. Stephen Sellers to rezone about 4.5 acres from 1/2 acre residential to forest and agriculture. The property is located at the corner of Old River Road and Gladiola Lane in Merle's Inlet. This property contains 2 separate parcels, and it currently has a residential mobile home on the eastern lot. This is a downzoning request from 1/2 acre to FA, which is a 1 acre minimum. The future land use map designates this tract as low-density residential. We do not need an amendment to that map to facilitate the request. This is not considered spot zoning due to the size of the tract, and the Planning Commission held a public hearing back in July and recommended a vote of 6-1 to deny the rezoning request. And we have not had any changes since your second reading approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Any questions from council for Ms. Richardson? Hearing none, is there a motion regarding ordinance number 23-28?
So moved.
Move for the adoption of ordinance number 23-28. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mercado and moved by Councilor Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going down to second reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 23-24. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. This is our much-discussed tree ordinance amendments. As you know, this was last amended in 2021. If you look at the update section of your report, the new ordinance has the latest changes in orange. Most of these changes are rewording and clarification after some consultation with Mr. Watson. We moved most of the definitions into the actual article. We left some of these specific trees in the Article 3. The rest of those were moved to Article 12. Places where we refer to the zoning administrator, the planning director, and a designee, we've clarified that to just say the planning director or a designee. We defined the urban and rural overlay zones a little more clearly, and as we discussed with Mr. Anderson from last meeting, we amended the distance for an approved tree removal from 8 feet and increased that to 10 feet. These changes that we discussed at the last meeting are still included. They may have been, again, reworded some. You can tell that by where the orange text is in your ordinance. And I did want to sort of emphasize, we don't want this to be lost, that the main component of this ordinance change is the enforcement, and that has remained the same. That still includes the 500 per inch for a tree that is removed without a permit. That is the biggest change, I think, of this ordinance, and the fact that permits for that parcel, if a tree is removed without a permit, will be withheld for a time period of 2 years. So just wanted to reiterate that, as we have made a good bit of other changes as well since that time. And I'll be glad to answer any more questions you might have.
Any questions from council to Ms. Richardson?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a few. Ms. Richardson, explain is there a difference between the rural and the urban on a single-family dwelling?
Yes.
Explain that difference.
In the rural zone, if you have what we call an occupied single-family lot, meaning there is a habitable structure on the lot, then the trees on that lot are exempt.
Are exempt.
Do not need a permit to be removed.
Okay, could I follow up a question before you go on, because I know there's some unoccupied language. In the rural area, your house could be sitting on you could cut grass of an acre, and your house sits in the middle of it, but your property is 40 acres. What, does it cover that 40 acres?
It's on the same parcel. Yes, sir.
It's on the same parcel, no matter what it's zoned.
That's right.
If the land is not attached to that land of the residents, but it's across the road, is that land covered under the ordinance?
It would not be covered under that exemption because it would be treated as a separate vacant parcel.
So that land has to be attached to that property that the dwelling is on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can continue. I didn't mean this.
And then the urban, if you have an occupied single-family residential lot, then based on this change, both protected and grand trees would need a permit to be removed. Again, it's not saying that they couldn't be removed, and the ordinance lists out some conditions in which we would review that. For example, you might have one within now 10 feet of your main structure, but you would need a permit from the zoning department with no fee to remove that tree.
Okay. Could you carry us through the scenario that would activate the 2-year clause?
The owner of wouldn't have to be a commercial parcel, but typically is a commercial parcel, removes a tree without obtaining a permit. Hopefully we get there before the stump is removed.
Would that be a grand or a protected tree?
Could be either.
Either or?
Yes. Hopefully we get there and the stump is still there. and then we will measure the diameter of that stump, and then we will issue a penalty fee to the owner of that parcel, $500 per inch of the diameter of tree that was removed. Then we will flag that parcel in our permitting system, of course, notify the property owner as such, that permits can't be issued on that site for a 2-year period.
That's on a parcel that was being developed.
Yes, sir.
How about if the construction has already began and during the process of construction, somebody cuts a protected tree? What do we do in that case?
Then I think the fine process would still be the same. We would probably issue a stop work order, or we would issue a stop work order until that fee was paid. I don't think and we discussed this some a while back, but I don't think we would want to halt construction for 2 years on that site. That's just going to lead to problems down the road. But we would enact the fee and probably, not issue a permit for a future structure on the site or further development for that 2-year period.
On the fine with the $500 per inch, when you find someone, and if this is passed, you will be issuing some fines, I'm sure. Where does that money go?
The ordinance states that it goes to a designated tree fund. We have a separate accounting fund for that, and that money is set aside there and can be used by the county for landscaping, planting of trees on county projects or in other areas.
If we run into the scenario where someone by ignorance, and I'm not using ignorance in a derogatory term here, they're just ignorant of the ordinance, and they cut a grand tree, not being aware of the ordinance, and they're fined $30,000. And it just so happens to be a couple living on a fixed income making $23,000 a year. What are the ramifications of them not being able to pay that fine?
I think they would have the opportunity to, I guess, challenge that through the Zoning Board of Appeals, challenge the interpretation of that fine, and potentially, I guess, argue that in front of the judge if it came to that, because if they don't pay the penalty fine, then we're probably going to have to issue a ticket to go before the judge, and then that's probably when that discussion of hardship and that sort of thing would come into play, I would imagine. I can't say that for sure. We haven't had that scenario play out yet.
Yeah. Because I foresee that happening also. Couple other questions. How did we come about with the $500 an inch fine?
I think that was a number that we borrowed from another ordinance, potentially the town of Pawleys, and maybe, I think it's the same number that Horry County uses, the 2-year plan, but we did take that from another ordinance.
Have you checked with any other counties that uses anything other than the $500 an inch?
Certainly there are differing amounts. Like I said, some of them are probably the same as ours is currently, which is a misdemeanor, $500 per tree charge. I'm sure there are plenty that have that. It's just a misdemeanor enforcement action like the other elements of the ordinance.
Okay. Getting back to the 2-year ban on the permit, if there is a housing development we have going in, and by pure ignorance of not the developer, but the contractor, he damages a grand tree and it ends up dying, or he cuts it down, will it just be a 2-year ban on that site where that tree was, or will it be the entire development?
Give me 1 second. It doesn't refer to a parcel here. I was going to see if it says that parcel. Let's look at the withholding section too.
And I have a follow-up question for that.
It does say in all cases of a development project.
So it would stop the entire development, it appears?
Well, it says no further development or land disturbance shall be allowed on the property. So that might be something we would need to discuss with the attorney if it came down to that. Obviously, you know, before we're going to charge a significant fine like that, we would want to be sure everyone was in agreement about that. But it does say that on the property for a period of 2 years.
Because you can basically, much as you've been dealing with contractors and developers, could you see that scenario happening?
Certainly possible. We're going to do our best, assuming a second reading approval happens, to give some notice to our regulars, if you will. I've already asked the zoning administrator to pull together a list of those. We don't want to do this to catch somebody off guard.
Yeah.
We certainly want them to be aware that this rule is in place so that those things don't happen. You know, this isn't an income generator, a revenue generator for us.
I understand.
So we're going to try our best to do enough outreach efforts to
Educate.
hopefully educate. Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, I feel sure y'all would do that. It's not a gotcha type thing.
No,
but you're dealing with as many trees as we have in this county. It's going to happen, unfortunately. Getting back to the 2-year rule, if it is a commercial enterprise going up, not a housing development, not a single lot, but a commercial where it's a very large, could be anywhere from 40 to 100, a couple hundred acres, or even 1,000 acres. We hope we get one that's 2,000 acres here before long. And they accidentally, through ignorance or whatever, take down a grand tree. Will that 2-year moratorium go on that site?
Again, I think we would have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, but I can't imagine that we would apply that to a 2,000-acre project. Typically, a project of that size is going to be phased in anyway. They're not going to submit engineering plans and construction plans for a 2,000-acre project at one time. We would typically be looking at a smaller piece.
Piece by piece. Yeah, 2,000 acres would overwhelm your little department, wouldn't it?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Sure.
I've got a question or two based, Raymond, on what you're saying. Most of these things that Councilman Newton's been bringing up are applicable only to the urban side with all the trees that are protected, et cetera, et cetera. Is that correct? Or is that countywide with the the $500 per inch, et cetera, et cetera?
The enforcement is countywide. Now, what type tree would be protected is different.
Right. Are there any trees that are protected on the rural side?
Yes, sir.
And what were they again?
You want me to, I can read it off. Live oaks, laurel oaks, red maple, ball cypress, pond cypress, southern magnolia, and yellow poplar.
Now, you had a problem. You had a problem with some of those being on there, correct?
All of them except live oaks.
All right, okay, but they're still there right now.
Well, some were taken off. River birch, American elm, American beech, hickories.
Pecan, peanut.
Pecan and pig nut.
All right, and is it true that we came up with these new fines because developers just weren't paying any attention to the fines that we had, and they were just cutting the trees down and paying the fines? Is that the root cause of it?
It was our feeling that the fines were not significant enough. Developers have paid their fines when they've been caught for removing the trees, but it hasn't been large enough to serve as a deterrent.
I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And one other thing that I wanted to speak to, just listening to some of these folks and talking about these longleaf pines, I did some research on that particular type of pine tree, and they do take 100 years to reach maturity. And at maturity, they're an average, I think, 28 inches in diameter at the breast height. And so we're going to protect those on the urban side, right, up to 15 inches, or are they above 15 inches, yeah, which is about 50-year growth, which is, I think, a good thing. And I really believe for the heritage of this county, we should start looking at protecting some of those pine trees on the rural side also. Certainly not on the tree farms, but on some of these lots, et cetera, that Councilman Newton was talking about. It would seem to me that tree is it's in decline, and it does support a lot of specific animal life. The one that I found amazing was the fox squirrels. We have them in Heritage Plantation, but you don't see them other places, and I never knew why that was. And evidently, their basic food source for the fox squirrel is that longleaf pine. And I'll just leave you all with that thought while we're talking about what we're going to protect and what we're not going to protect. Thank you.
I'd just like to comment on the longleaf pines. Listen to some of the things that have been said about it, and you'd think we were about a half a dozen trees away from extinction, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There's an estimated 3 million acres of longleaf pine left in the southeast. It's hard to comprehend the vastness of 3 million acres.
What's hard to comprehend is the number of square miles in the southeast. And it's much more than 300,000 acres, I can tell you that.
3 million.
3 million, whatever it is. We've got 800, almost 900 square miles in Georgetown County.
Is there any additional comments from council?
Yeah, one other thing, just here, we would think they would be going extinct, but right down the road, you have 2,000 acres of longleaf pines right there at Hobcaw. You could go head to the south and you have thousands of acres right there in the Francis Marion National Park. You can go down Highway 701 and you can count them, thousands of longleaf pines. I'm just trying to say they're not on the verge of extinction. Do I love a longleaf pine? I certainly do. It's a beautiful tree. Takes a long time to grow. There's thousands of them that are planted every year by landowners for future generations. But we're not at the point of extinction like we hear a lot of times. We get some extremist views on we've got to save this, we got to save that if we don't do whatever. But most people can't even identify a longleaf pine if it hit them in the head, much less try to identify one between the other pines that we have in the area.
Okay. Any other comment from council?
One quick question, Holly, and I might have missed it, but in the scenario where a protected tree was removed and the 2-year ban was put on, what recourse do they have? Would a developer have if that ban were to go into effect from something they did?
Again, I think that they could challenge our interpretation of that to the county's zoning board of appeals. And then, of course, I mean, the court, I guess, is always an option.
Okay. Thank you.
For anyone.
Let me ask one thing, Ms. Richardson, and maybe more for legal counsel, really. Looking at 1305.4, everyone seems to be somewhat concerned about the mandatory 2-year period. It does not seem to give staff or anyone else any type of discretion regarding some inadequacy which may have occurred, and the situations may differ in some respect. Has any consideration been given to changing the language somewhat to say maybe up to 2 years instead of just a mandatory 2 years? And any reason, and the rationale for not having it up to 2 years instead of just a mandatory 2?
Mr. Chairman, part of the reason for that, are you looking at, it says in all cases of the development project, and that sentence or that paragraph in red, is that the one you're referencing?
Yes, it is.
And let me find my place there. Wait a minute. Yeah. Says shall be allowed on the property. No further development shall. The shall rather than may or may be subject to. A couple of things on that. One, and this will address some of the questions raised by Councilman Newman. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Richardson, but when these plans are submitted, they also typically include locations of trees and trees to be removed. Is that correct?
When we get the development plan.
Right. So because the developers or contractors, part of their plan is the identification of existing trees and the trees to be removed, it would be, they're already mindful of that. It would be a rare occasion in which a tree was removed that wasn't planned and approved to be removed. Now, do accidents happen? Yes, but those are accidents. That's not an intentional removal, and that can be considered. Part of why the language is shall rather than may is to not put a burden in these kinds of extreme circumstances. Essentially, you're going to be putting staff in a position of having to make those kind of judgment calls. So the idea here was to try to draw, in the totality of the ordinance, draw out the bright lines of what are violations and what are the consequences of them, and to remove staff from having to act as a judge in a situation, particularly when staff has already reviewed and made decisions regarding trees that can be removed based on the site plan, or development plan. So once that plan's approved, now the burden shifts to the developer or the contractor to comply with the plan that they submitted and got approved. If they do not comply with that, then they carry the burden of that. That was the rationale behind it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the mandatory aspects of it. I have no problem with the words shall or any mandatory wording per se, just that it does not seem to have any type of discretionary measures with the 2 year, because you're going to have different circumstances which may arise, as Councilor Newton may have mentioned also, and the circumstances may differ in some of those matters. So I'm just asking staff, even if we were to approve second reading tonight, would you take a look at that again prior to third reading to see whether the language can be changed instead of having a mandatory 2 years?
So you're maybe considering or suggesting up to, some language that would say up to?
Yes, to give some discretion there, I would think, because situations will differ.
So you're basically some flexibility in the time period, not a mandatory 2, but like Ms. Rich said, up to. Okay. But also part of that is that I think if I recall correctly, I think there's been some situations we also were wanting to have a little bit of foresight. You have a number of, I think, parcels out there that developers have bought and are holding. So, part of it also is to provide this window of opportunity that's going to also have some deterrent effect, where they wouldn't, say, buy it, cut, and then just continue to hold for a while to get out of a non-permitting period, if you will, and then begin construction. So to give something in there that's going to be long enough to where they're like, all right, we're ready to move. We need to be compliant with this. We're trying to close off the loopholes because, frankly, we've seen a lot of them. And so that was part of the rationale as well. But we can certainly look at the language. Thank you, sir.
Have the developer beforehand ask for the variance and have that go through Planning Commission?
Yes. If it's a protected tree, it can be reviewed as part of the development plan, and it may be a tree that meets one of the criteria and can be removed if it's in the place of where the structure is going to go, if they can't shift it, if they can't move it. If it's a grand tree on a commercial tract, then that tree is protected, but their correct avenue would be to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's why we established that specific criteria in this ordinance that the board would then apply. So yes, they would have a legal path moving forward.
Right.
This would only be for the person, of course, that didn't go that route and remove the tree without approval. Sometimes that happens after we get the development plan. Sometimes it happens before we have any plan in front of us, and they take the tree out.
I've got a comment, Mr. Watson. I'd just like to commend you on the way you just framed that example. Made all the sense in the world to me.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Couple more questions, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Richardson, on the cost that this is going to have to be incurred by the developers or the single-family dwelling, it'll affect all building eventually. You know, there's all kind of barriers, fences, trenches, and I've read this in detail. There's quite a few things, certain gauge of fence, certain height of fence, that certain things have to be, trees have to be protected with mulch and over the root system. You know, a huge amount of work has to be done by the contractor in order to work around these trees that are staying, not the ones that are wanting to cut down, just the ones that are staying. And then if they want to cut some down and we approve some trees to be removed, then there's more cost in that because they have to go back and replant certain trees at a certain diameter, correct?
Possibly, depending on
Yeah.
how much canopy they have left on the site.
How much canopy they have left remaining. Have we done any cost analysis what this is going to, tree wells, which worried me when I read that, and I made some calls about the tree wells because the land in this area, most of the time you got to muck it out, then you got to bring dirt back in. You might raise the elevation of your property, be it 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, whatever. And we're working around a grand tree, let's say, and we put that grand tree in a tree well, I think is what it's called. What is the likelihood of that grand tree surviving that tree well?
I'm certainly not a tree expert who could speak to that. I do think the ordinance allows for an alternative. The developer could certainly propose an alternative to the tree well. And as long as that came from how we define as a tree professional, you know, we would certainly review that and allow it. In response to your question about a cost analysis, we have not done that. The tree protection measures have been in the ordinance since I've been here. The tree wells was added in a later revision.
Correct.
The other things you mentioned have been there and in effect and are, you know, part of the cost of development right now.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. And by the way, I appreciate all the hard work that you and your staff have done on this. It's been I know it's been an arduous time dealing with this, getting so many different opinions and 7 different views from counselors. Does not help things sometimes, does it? But I'm glad it was your department, you know, come through like you always do. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, let's move on now. You've heard a report from Ms. Richardson. Is there a motion for second reading approval of ordinance number 23-24?
So moved.
It's moved by Councilman Mercado. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Elliott. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a few comments. You know, we've been dealing with this for a while now. We deferred it, and Ms. Richardson and her staff have jumped through hoops getting us to where we are. But I do think that this is so important and affects so many people. I think still there's some improvements can be done on it. And I know we're on our second reading. Two of the main ones is the 2-year, as we discussed there earlier, and the $500 per inch is very problematic to me. On the 2-year deal, be it a single family dwelling or a development or a industry. I think we're using a 16-pound hammer to solve a problem that maybe a 4-pound hammer could have done just as well. And the $500 per inch, I'm sure these developers, when they make a mistake, contractors, they can deal with that with no problem. But these rural residents, be it on the neck or on the western part of the county, this has a potential to basically destroy lives. And I have a serious problem with the $500 per inch. This could actually cost a family to go in bankruptcy, and I do not think that's what we're wanting to do or wanting to support. What the correct amount is, I do not know. Can it be changed? I certainly hope so. But to me, this is just totally unacceptable at $500 an inch, because you're going to have mistakes made. And the way some people look at property rights, they're going to know about the ordinance, they're going to cut it anyway, because their view is it's their property. And we basically look at property rights from two different views, I think, in the county. The local residents that have been here for what I call generational residents, maybe 5, 6, 7 generations on the same piece of land. That land has sustained that family or families from Revolutionary time and before on. And that land has, when we look at property rights, that land is the reason that family has survived for the last 250 years. They raised their crops on there that fed their family. They raised their livestock that fed their family. They cut their firewood off that land that kept their family warm. They cut firewood off that land that they cooked their food with. Their entire livelihood was based off of that piece of land, be it 5 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres. And now you have 7th, 8th generation families living on that land, and we're going to come along and we're going to say, yeah, it's been a good 250-year run, but now we're telling you, you can't do to your land what the previous family members did for the last 250 years. And that is a distinction between the people that generationally grew up here in this county and the ones that have moved in within the last 10, 15 years. We have the generational families have a much more connection to the land, and they will tell you they have a problem with getting approval to do anything on their land. They don't think they need to. And we're going to, and the rural overlay zone, we're going to run into a problem with that. You might do that into urban also, because there's generational families over there as well. But there is a big difference how we look at that, even though we do not think it's a bad idea to protect some of these trees. There's no problem with that. We've been protecting this land for the last 250 years, and we ain't about to stop now. And it's as pretty today, basically because we've protected and looked out after this land for the last 250 years. There's been a lot of recommendations coming from people that we've heard, be it from California, New York, Vermont, wherever. Well, we did it this way, or we did it this way. I don't think we want to be taking any advice from California, from what I can tell. God forbid if we ever do. Trees will be our last problem we have. We will cut all of them down just to survive, more than likely. But it irks the locals, the property owners, to come in and us, we already have enough regulations on them like it is. And when we pass this is one more freedom for that property owner that they do not have. We're taking it away from them. No matter how you look at it, we're taking that freedom away from them. And they have a serious problem. I have talked to quite a few people in the last 2 weeks concerning this. And I can't repeat what some of them even told me due to the decorum of this council. But it was not good. Do they think they're good caretakers of their own land? Yes, they do. They know better than anybody how to take care of their land, and they have a problem with outsiders coming in and telling them how to do it, especially when it's recommended from someone that hasn't lived here as long as we have, or have as deeper roots as we have to the land. If we did not love this area that we live in, and we are a unique community, we are a unique area. Our culture is totally different from the ones that move in here. We talk differently, we worship differently. We eat things that you've never heard of, and that the ones that did not grow up here would probably never even try. Our activities are different. It's just two cultures. And that's why you have to understand, when you have two cultures at class, if we didn't like it here, we would move somewhere to where we liked it. But we chose to stay here because this is the property we love. This is the land we love. And we're set with values that was handed down from generation to generation. And when you have cultures that clash in a area as small as Georgetown County, you're going to have some disagreements. That's fine. We're not asking anybody to change and come and eat what we eat, dress like we dress, do activities like we do. Do whatever you want. It's a free country. But we want to be able to maintain our culture like we always have, like our parents did, like our grandparents and our grandparents before them. And the locals take offense, highly take offense, when they are told, well, this is how we did it elsewhere. Well, if you liked it how you did it elsewhere, go back to where you like it. We like our culture the way it is. We like to barbecue our hogs. We like to cook our chicken purlos. We like to go on dove shoots. But you have to understand the culture to understand there's only a couple things higher than what we think of our property. One is our family and the other one is our church. Property rights is right behind that. And many people in this area have died for those property rights. Some of the members of our council have had to fight twice as hard as some of the others to get those property rights, and have not had them as long. And so it is a very divisive subject. I did not enjoy discussing this with some of the residents in my district because I knew how they felt. And I have yet to talk to anyone from my district that supported this tree ordinance. But I think we can make it better. It's never going to be perfect, no matter how hard Holly and her staff works. It will never please everybody. We understand that. But I do think we can make some more tweaks to it that will be better for us all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I had a comment, and I was under the impression that just what we talked about here tonight, that the reason for the Zoning Board of Appeals is to take into consideration all these zoning ordinance positions, whether it's trees or sidewalks or whatever you want to talk about. So they're there to take care of, I think, what Mr. Newton's been talking about. If you've got an issue, you can take it up with the Zoning Board of Appeals before you ever take the axe to the tree or whatever. So please keep that in mind if I'm correct. Am I correct on that, Mr. Watson?
The appeals to the Zoning Board of Appeals would be in case of a discrepancy from a property owner or developer, whatever the case may be, from a decision of staff. So let's say that the axe, to use your phrase, has already been taken to the tree, and so then a fine of X amount is put in place. If they disagree with that or contest it, then they would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Did that answer your question, Mr. Anderson?
I think so. I think that in other cases, though, that's specific to trees. I think I've been dealing with one that's similar now where a decision was made on where a building could be built, and the person was told, well, you can take it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and if they'll let you go along with that, then I think whatever they come up with, that's the final say-so, correct?
That would be a setback variance. So they would
Right,
apply
setbacks, whatever, anything to do with zoning, and I just put the trees into that same category. And if that's not the case, then so be it, but I just thought that it would be.
Well, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and Ms. Richardson, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Zoning Board of Appeals does hear, as the name implies, zoning questions or issues or contests. I addressed yours simply in the context of what we're talking about here with regards to trees. And Mr. Newton, I hear your concerns. I'll get with Ms. Richardson. We will work on the language on the 2 years. Regarding the $500 per inch, again, we looked at other ordinances. We also looked at some of the developments that have been going on. When you have multi-million-dollar development projects, as we have here, the current fine structure simply has no teeth. It's not a deterrent at all. It's merely a cost of doing business. So the intent here, the goal here, was to put in some kind of a fine structure that would have a deterrent effect in the face of multi-million-dollar projects. Now, I hear your concern about the private, we'll just call them mom and pop, so to speak, property owner. I'll talk to Ms. Richardson about how we might could figure out some exception for that. In any legislation, and ordinance is a form of legislation, if you try to legislate for every conceivable scenario, you simply can't do it. And you get on a slippery slope where your ordinance or your statute simply becomes unmanageable. But we'll look at it. I think we can make some adjustments between second and third reading. And I'm happy to talk with you more about it afterwards.
Yeah, I would rather address the $500 per inch and use the 2-year deal as a deterrent if we can't work out something with the fines. Because the 2-year deal with the mom and pops owners is not a big a deal as the $500 per inch.
I think what we can do, in order to move this along, let's go ahead and you'll have some discussions afterwards. You try to revise this, and this is just the second reading, so you're going to have some discussion regarding what language to use and how to properly revise the ordinance to comply with all of our concerns.
Yes, sir. And one thing I'll mention very briefly, because I know we want to get on, the enforcement section references project, any project. I'm trying to look, certainly it says project with regards to stop orders. I was looking for the section on fines. What we don't have really is a definition of project. So perhaps it can be a simpler fix. Don't hold me to this. I really hesitate to say this because sure as the world I won't be able to figure it out. But if we can define project in such a way that then we know exactly who's in and who's out, so to speak, under a project. So let me look at that as well. All right?
Okay.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman.
Sure, thank you. Okay, is there a motion to amend, to incorporate the revised text? It's been moved by Councilor Mercado. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Carolina. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, we will first vote on the amended ordinance. All in favor of the amended ordinance, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. We have Councilor Newton opposing. Okay, now we go back to the main motion with the incorporated text. All in favor of the main motion with the incorporated text, please raise your hand. Opposed? You have two opposed. Councilor Newton and Councilor Carolina. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. We'll go down to ordinance number 23-30. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. The zoning ordinance currently permits self-storage facilities as a conditional use in our general commercial and resort services zoning districts and as a permitted use in HI and LI. They are currently allowed in the Wacomanet Commercial Corridor Overlay Zone. We do not restrict any commercial uses in that zone. It's based on the underlying zoning, but that section, of course, does have some general design principles that are put in place in order to protect the aesthetics of that corridor. As we said last meeting, staff researched other areas and reviewed the existing storage facilities along the corridor and suggested amending the overlay zone to add additional design element restrictions. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this in July and voted 5-1 to recommend approval for those amended design standards. However, based on the direction that this council gave at the last meeting, we have now updated the ordinance, and self-storage facilities in this proposal are listed as being prohibited in the Wacomanet Commercial Corridor Overlay Zone. And again, that is 500 feet on either side of Highway 17, of course, from the bridge to the Horry County line. We also added conditions to self-storage facilities throughout the county. So of course, outside of the overlay zone, but anywhere else, they would be allowed. So in those zoning districts I mentioned before, commercial, resort services, HI, and LI. In those sections, we added the restrictions that they must be located 100 feet from a principal residential structure. They have to put a level 4 buffer around the perimeter of the site, and the building coverage would be limited to 40%. Those changes are in this ordinance that's before you in red. We did, again, clarify some of the language with Mr. Watson. So there are some minor changes in that regard, but the main differences are in red in the attached ordinance that you have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richardson. Any questions for Ms. Richardson? Okay, is there a motion for second reading and approval of ordinance number 23-30?
Removed.
It's moved by Councilor Elliott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mercado. Any discussion?
I have a quick question. If I want to do a motion to evoke pending ordinance, at what point, from an order standpoint, would I put that in?
I'll defer to my counsel here. I'm thinking it's after this motion's been approved.
Pending ordinance doctrine can be invoked anytime council has undertaken and held public hearings to affirmatively pursue an ordinance change. You have done that here. So I think what it would take is simply just council saying, yes, we would like to invoke pending ordinance specific to this ordinance. And if that is the mind of council, then, just it can be stated as a declaration of council and then move forward with your vote.
And that will be taken after the motion has been approved.
I'm sorry.
The pending orders will be invoked after the motion has been approved.
Yes, sir. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion to amend, to incorporate amend ordinance number 23-30 to incorporate the revised text?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilor Mercado. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Newton. I think it was. Okay. Elliott. Councilor Elliott, I'm sorry. Okay. And Councilor Anderson. Okay.
It's done. That's the range.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, Councilor Newton opposes. So we'll go on back to the original motion with the amended text. All in favor of the original motion with the incorporated text, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Councilor Newton opposed. Okay. All right, we'll move on down to first reading of ordinances.
Mr. Chairman? Can we
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead and
sorry.
do that?
Yes.
So I'd like to do a motion to invoke pending ordinance on 23-30.
With a motion by Councilor Mercado to invoke the pending ordinance regarding ordinance number 23-30. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Anderson. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, one opposition. Okay, thank you. We move on down to our first reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 23-32. Amendment of the fiscal year 2023-24 budget ordinance. And it's being read into the record by title only. We'll move down to approval of minutes. I think all the minutes are in your record for our meeting of September 12, 2023. Is there a motion for adoption of those minutes regarding September 12, 2023?
So moved.
It's moved by Councilor Elliott for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Carolina. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are now going into executive session to receive legal counsel, discuss legal matters and negotiation pursuant to SC Code annotated section 30-4-78-2. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Newton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now moving to executive session. We are back. Is there a motion to return to open session?
So move.
Moved by Councilor Elliott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor to return to open session, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, we are now back at open session. Please let the record reflect that we are returning from executive session after receiving legal counsel, discuss legal matters and negotiation pursuant to SC Code annotated section 30-4-70A2. Also note that there are no votes taken while we were in executive session. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Moved by Councilor Elliott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Mercado. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.